I'm Nancy, and my older brother, Keith, is 7 years older than me. From a young age, Keith was always exceptional, especially when it came to academics. He consistently excelled, earning top marks and impressing everyone around him. He graduated from a prestigious high school and university, making our parents incredibly proud. But as he got older, the constant praise and the high expectations seemed to shape him in ways I didn't expect. After finishing his studies and landing a new job, Keith made the decision to leave our family home. When he did, he casually commented that he couldn't stand the dull routine of living with us anymore. I'll never forget the mixed look on our parents' faces: shock, disappointment, and something else, something that felt like sadness. Growing up, Keith had been the joyful, beloved older brother, someone I admired deeply, but I couldn't help but feel a sting of anger when he left. I never excelled the way he did, whether it was in school or sports. My high school wasn't renowned for its academic achievements, but I always appreciated the love and warmth we had as a family. To me, that was the real treasure, and it hurt that Keith seemed to disregard it, so focused on his own success. As a kid, I looked up to Keith as my hero. He handled everything with ease, taking care of me and always knowing what to do. But by the time I was nearing graduation, he began to question the value of higher education. He dismissed my ambitions, telling me it was pointless. When our parents confronted him, he blamed them for the way he felt. Despite the tension, I pushed forward. I enrolled in a national university and landed a job at the company I'd always dreamed of. With my parents' encouragement, I became someone who valued kindness and family. Meanwhile, Keith's life took its own path. He had already gotten married, though neither my parents nor I had met his wife. Then, one day during work, I received an unexpected call from my mom. It was unusual for her to call me at that time, so I stepped outside to take the call privately. Her voice, softer than usual, delivered devastating news. My father had suddenly fallen ill. Panic set in, and I immediately told my supervisor I had to leave and rushed to the hospital, hoping it wasn't as bad as it sounded. When I arrived in the waiting room, I found my mom in tears. I sat down beside her, heart pounding, and asked, "What happened, Mom?" She struggled to find the words as I tried to make sense of how my father, who seemed fine just that morning, could be in such a state. After a moment of silence, my mother's voice broke as she whispered, "Your father has cancer." The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. I was frozen in place, unable to process her words. She took a deep breath before continuing, her voice heavy with sorrow. "It's stage 4. The cancer has spread to his bile duct, and it's not something they can remove." Her tears came freely now, and I couldn't find the words to comfort her, the shock overwhelming me. Desperately, I asked, "What's the next step?" My mother nodded, her eyes filled with dread, and moments later, the doctor arrived to explain the situation in detail. The cancer had spread more than they'd anticipated, and surgery was deemed too risky. The doctor laid out the harsh options before us: chemotherapy or palliative care, but neither came with any certainty. As my mother and I sat there, holding hands and absorbing the weight of the situation, the clock's ticking seemed impossibly loud in the silence. I knew that we had to make decisions quickly, and I felt the need to include Keith. Despite the distance that had grown between us, I suggested we call him, hoping he would come to help us decide what to do. My mother smiled weakly and admitted she'd already informed him, but when she shared his response, I knew what was coming. Keith had always been one to avoid tough conversations, especially when it came to difficult decisions. I couldn't just let this go, though. We needed to act as a family. I tried calling him again, repeatedly, but he didn't pick up. After more than 10 attempts, he finally answered, his voice laced with irritation. "Why do you keep calling me?" he snapped. I quickly explained our father's condition, urging him to come to the hospital, but Keith's response left me speechless. He dismissed my concerns as nothing more than overreaction, saying, "There's no point in talking about it. I'm hanging up." I stood there, staring at my phone in disbelief. I couldn't understand how he could be so indifferent, so detached. His lack of empathy felt like a slap in the face, leaving me stunned and shaken by his callousness. I had long understood that Keith lacked a strong sense of familial bond or gratitude, but the depth of his detachment still managed to catch me off guard. When I returned to my mother after our phone call, concern was written all over her face. She asked gently what had happened. I hesitated, then simply said he seemed busy, carefully avoiding the harsh truth. She let out a long sigh and murmured, almost to herself, "It would have brought some comfort if Keith were here." Our father chose to spend his final days in a palliative care ward, where he quietly passed away a few months later. When the time came, I called Keith to inform him of our father's passing and gave him the details for the wake and funeral. His response was chillingly indifferent. He said he was too busy with work and told us to go ahead without him. True to his word, Keith never showed up. Even my mother, who had been trying to accept his distance, seemed shaken. I don't think she had ever imagined her son would skip his own father's funeral. Friends and relatives expressed disbelief and disappointment at his absence. Later, in a quiet moment after the funeral, my mother sighed deeply and whispered, "He really didn't come." I reached for her hand and said softly but firmly, "Mom, let's not dwell on Keith anymore. He's chosen his path. What matters now is that we remember Dad with love." She squeezed my hand tightly, managing a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," she said. The very next day, however, Keith turned up at our apartment. His face, usually unreadable, now showed a restless urgency. Without a greeting, he blurted out, "Where's the inheritance Dad left?" I stared at him, stunned. The rawness of his demand, so soon after his absence from the funeral, was hard to process. My voice shook with disbelief as I said, "You didn't even come to say goodbye, and now you show up asking about money?" He snapped, visibly irritated. "Kids shouldn't talk back." Tension filled the room. My mother, trying to keep things calm, responded gently. She explained that aside from the apartment, there wasn't much left. She placed our father's bank passbook on the table and flipped through it, showing that all funds had already been transferred to a different account. Keith looked confused. "What's going on?" Quietly, my mother answered, "Your father asked me to move the money into my account, and the apartment, it's now under my name." Keith was silent for a long moment, then let out a sharp click of his tongue and stormed out without another word. Watching him leave, my mother and I exchanged a look. Despite everything, we felt a deep appreciation for our father's foresight and quiet efforts to protect us, even after he was gone. Months later, tragedy struck again. My mother suffered a fall and was taken to the hospital. What initially seemed like a simple cold, diagnosed at a small clinic, turned out to be something far more serious. A more thorough examination at a larger hospital revealed advanced stage pneumonia, and the doctors gave her only about 3 months to live. The news left me stunned. She had seemed so well. Just days after passing that 3-month mark, my mother passed away peacefully. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Guilt weighed on me. I kept wondering if I should have taken her to a better hospital sooner, if I'd missed the signs. Keith never came to see her, even after learning of her condition. My aunt, my mother's sister, and I took care of everything, from the arrangements to the final rites. For my aunt, Keith's absence was almost too much to bear. She was furious, and rightly so, but I, recalling everything he'd done, or failed to do, felt there was no point in hoping for anything more from him. A few days after the funeral, while my aunt and I were sorting through heirlooms, Keith appeared again, this time with his wife, whom we were meeting for the first time. "Where's Mom's inheritance? She must have left something," he asked, getting straight to the point. I was speechless. My aunt looked at him as though she couldn't believe what she was hearing, but what shocked me even more was his wife. She stood silently beside him, expressionless, not even offering a greeting, no eye contact, no words. Even at that moment, Keith didn't bother visiting our mother's grave. I turned to him, my voice heavy with grief and restrained anger. "Brother, please, at least go say goodbye. Our parents are gone. The least you can do is pay your respects." "I'm just asking you to pay your respects," I said calmly, holding back the tide of emotion swelling within me. Keith let out a sneering laugh. "Does that even matter anymore?" he scoffed, then added coldly, "By the way, how much of Mom's inheritance is left?" At that moment, May, our aunt, snapped. Her expression darkened, and her voice, usually gentle, rang out with fury. "How can you even think about money right now? Nancy has handled everything alone, the funeral, the grief, everything. Is a little gratitude too much to ask? Your parents deserve more than this." Keith waved her off dismissively. "This has nothing to do with you, Auntie, stay out of it." The room chilled instantly. My brother's indifference and his wife's calculating smile deepened the tension. Then, with saccharine sweetness, my sister-in-law added, "Of course I remember you, Nancy, but don't think you can just keep your mother's inheritance all to yourself. Sorry, but we won't allow that. This apartment is lovely, it's perfect for us." I stood there, stunned. I never imagined I'd hear such words from my own family. "Why should I be the one to leave?" I asked, voice trembling with disbelief. Twirling a finger lazily, my sister-in-law continued, "It's been renovated, it's close to the station, and the neighborhood is great. We've decided, we're moving in. That was the breaking point. All you care about is the inheritance, I burst out, my anger no longer containable. Is that all our parents meant to you? Keith turned away with a theatrical sigh, always so emotional. Screaming doesn't solve anything. We'll be back in 3 days. Have your things packed and ready. Their intentions were clear and cruel. Tears welled in my eyes, not just from the injustice but from the profound sorrow of realizing just how far my brother had fallen. I wiped my tears, trying to regain composure. May placed a hand on my shoulder and quietly handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked, surprised. "Your mother gave this to me in case something like this happened," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "She told me to give it to you when the time was right." With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten in the graceful, familiar script of my mother. "To my precious Nancy. If you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. I'm so sorry for leaving you this way." A lump rose in my throat. My tears fell freely as I read. "You might face trouble from Keith regarding the inheritance, but please, don't worry. Everything your father entrusted to me now belongs to you. The apartment, the savings, it's all for you. I apologize for using your seal without asking, but your father and I agreed. We wanted to protect you, to ensure you'd be secure when we couldn't be there anymore. You've grown into a compassionate, strong woman, and we're so proud of you. Remember, it's not academic achievement that defines a person, but the kindness and strength they show others. You have both, in abundance." Her final words urged me to live freely, to love boldly, and to never lose hope. Tears soaked the page as May wrapped her arms around me. "Your mother adored you," she whispered. "You were her treasure." Inside the envelope was also a bank book, under my name, with a substantial balance. It was everything my mother had quietly saved for me, her final gift. 3 days later, as promised, Keith and his wife returned, without knocking. "We're here," Keith announced smugly. "You've had time to pack, right?" His wife looked at me with clear expectation. "Well, isn't it time for you to leave?" I took a deep breath and stood tall. "Actually," I said evenly, "this apartment is now mine." The room fell silent. Keith and his wife exchanged stunned glances. "What kind of joke is that?" Keith said, clearly rattled. "I'm the eldest son. The house should go to me." "This is news to me," his wife muttered, eyes narrowing. I met their gaze, unwavering. "The ownership was transferred before Mom passed. The inheritance and this home are now legally mine. There's nothing to discuss." Keith's face twisted in disbelief. "Then give us half the inheritance. You don't need it all." I stared at him. "You ignored our parents, abandoned your responsibilities, and now you want a share? What changed?" His face turned crimson. His wife, sensing the truth unraveling, hissed, "This isn't what we agreed on." I'd heard they were struggling. Keith had recently lost his job, and they were bouncing between unstable gigs. Their desperation was now palpable. Arguments erupted between them, their blame-shifting echoing in the hallway. Calmly, I said, "This is my home now. If you cause any more trouble, I'll call the police." With clenched jaws and bitter expressions, they finally left. I deleted their contact information that evening, drawing a line in the sand. From that moment on, I began a new chapter. Now, I live in this apartment, my parents' legacy, with a partner who loves and respects me. He proposed we build our future here, and I agreed. Together, we plan to raise a family filled with the warmth and love my parents gave me. This home, once shadowed by loss and betrayal, has become a sanctuary of new beginnings.